sign that first, then it can go.
Ben?
Send that round.
Sweet. Are you okay now, Graham?
Oh, I just sent it that way.
Oh, it's gone that.
Is that all right?
Oh, it's fine, I can see it now. Yes, I didn't realise it was on that.
I've got some notes. I didn't get to them.
Are you all sorted with the computers? Everyone's working, all sitting now in the right places. Do apologise for the mix-up with the names. Especially you, Phil. Illustrious Vice Chairman, no nameplate.
I can live with it. Graham thought I was lost. I wasn't. I was trying to be fair. To be fair, I wasn't my name. It was clearly what I was.
I'm more concerned that people thought I was Bernard.
Right, members, before we start, I'd just like to thank the members of the who came to the independent remuneration panel. There was Anne, there was Richard and Caroline and Ash Arshed. It was sometimes these things when you're interviewing people, I thought we'd get some right no-opers, but I'll tell you what, the standard of quality of some of the members were excellent, and thank you all for your attendance. And we were totally united. Forget party politics for the day. We were all the same hymn sheet, and we all picked the same people. So, but we have selected 3 very excellent people, so you'll be pleased to know. Hopefully, they'll be putting all our salaries up.
I doubt it.
Also, before we kick in, as you probably noticed, Lisa's not here. She's still in hospital. She's been quite poorly, unfortunately. So I'd like your permission to send her a get well card. And Julie's also not here, but she is well, but she's going to a graduation of her partner's daughter, so good luck to her as well. But I think it's important because she's been quite poorly. And I thought she was out of hospital, but sadly she's still in hospital. So I'm sure you'll join me in sending her the very best wishes in a speedy recovery. Thank you. Right, going to apologies. So over to you, Mr. Starter.
Thank you very much, Chair. So apology received from Councillor Ian Wilkes.
Yeah, it's disappointing. There's a couple here that I've not seen them at the meeting yet, which is disappointing, certainly. I wish they would ask the leader to take them off these committees, because today we were nicely caught, but I know last time, as you all know, it was very, very close. And it's nice to see Bernard looking a lot better today, because Bernard he attended, although he was feeling quite unwell. So thank you for that, Bernard.
Thank you, Chairman, and apologise for being...
No, thank you for coming.
But I'm just one of those that no matter what, I'm there.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you very much, Bernard, anyway. So, declarations of interest?
Okay. Can I just mention on behalf of Ian Wilkes, he works nights, so sometimes he's just too tired to drive.
Nobody? Right. Minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of March. Can someone approve those as a correct record? Right, plenty of hands. Janice and Graham. Okay, thank you, Janice. Agenda item 4. Annual report on the information governance. I believe Natalie Morrissey. Apparently we've got nobody on the Zoom meeting tonight, or Teams. We've got them all in person, so that's a new start to the first time ever since 2019. Right, welcome, Natalie.
Good morning.
It's, the stage is all yours now. Over to you. Thank you.
Good morning. There was a few things that I wanted to highlight from the Information Governance and Cyber annual statement. Under point 4.2, you'll see that we are changing the format of our passwords from a minimum of 8 characters to 12. This will obviously affect everybody. Even with our current policy of having uppercase, lowercase, a number and a symbol, with current technology at the moment, that would take 5 days to crack. Yet by increasing that to 12 characters, means that it will take about 8 million years for one of our passwords to be cracked. Now, 12 characters may seem a lot, but if we refer back to the National Cyber Security Centre advice of picking 3 random words, that's really just three words of 4 characters each, with numbers and symbols, and you've got your 12 characters. The multi-factor authentication that we've also brought in does give us an extra layer of security. When we look at security, one of the things that we are doing is championing a Cyber Champions programme, which is run by Staffordshire Police. And I'm pleased to say that we've got even more people that are on board with that now. We've now got 54 staff who have been trained by the police, and they've got that extra knowledge of cyber threats and can help their colleagues and peers. On cyber as well, IG have recently issued some guidance for members, helping them spot phishing emails, etc. And we are going to be following that up with some face-to-face training as well. So I'm just waiting for dates before we can set that up. One of the things that the information governance team do is report on any information security incidents. And I'm referring here to point 4.5. We did have a lot reported from 1st of April last year to the 31st of March, a total of 351. But I think the important thing to note there is only 6 of them met the criteria to be reported to the ICO. And of those 6, that there was no further action issued by the ICO. We've also reported that we've, unfortunately, the cybersecurity manager, David Sharkey, has now left us. We're following a recruitment process. We have got a new internal move, and he's starting in post on the 1st of June. We've already got, a really good working relationship, so any further sort of cyber work will carry on as it has been happening, which is good news. Also, the information management strategy is moving ahead, and we're about to embark on the EDRMS project, which will be starting soon. Those were the main highlights that I wanted to raise. Has anybody got any additional questions?
I'd just like to say, it can take me 8 million years to remember the password at 12. I struggle with these others. Go on, Graham.
Both Parliament and Newcastle Underlying Borough Council use an authenticator app to log on. So you have to put your name in, your password, and then use the authenticator app. And when I was working for Parliament, they told me that was the most effective way. So are we planning to have an authenticator app for SCC?
Is that the same as the multi-factor authenticator, which is where you have
get
to put
6
in a
random
code?
numbers that change every 30 seconds.
Yeah, we do have that in place at the moment.
But not for members.
I think it is being rolled out.
I haven't got it.
Yeah, I'll double check, but it doesn't ask you each time. I think you authenticate once, you get the code, and then it's only if there's any major changes will it ask you for the code again, and it's quite intermittent. But I will double check for you and report back if it has been rolled out to members, but I know it is in the process of being.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for your information, Graham, it's happened to me, so it is intermittent. I've had that where I've been then text a number and got to put it in, so it does already happen.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that cybersecurity will always have limited assurance, whichever way we go. So absolutely appreciate everything that's been done here. The Freedom of Information Act and the environmental information requests all coming out 100 or 99%. Brilliant news, and that news that only 6, because I was going to hit you with a, whoa, that's high, but only 6 went to the IOC, and absolutely nothing after that is brilliant news. To me, it's showing that everything is working correctly, so it gives me a bit of assurance, so thank you.
Thank you.
Caroline's absolutely right. I've been asked for an authenticator quite a lot recently, actually, which I don't know whether that reflects on my character or the system. The other thing is, I think it's worth noting that because I sit on the adoption panel, and the papers received on the adoption panel are extremely sensitive. Then there's added security in there. To make sure they, so I think that's excellent. So this is more a congratulatory thought, but also I'm going to ask a question which could be everybody else in the room knows this, so I'm going to make myself look a bit foolish. Occasionally when I get an email that I'm suspicious of, I think to forward it to somewhere, and I've got to be honest, I'll make a phone call every time to find it, but I don't know where to forward it to. Do other people know that? Is there a system to forward an email that you're concerned about? That I've missed, and apologies, Mr. Chairman, if I have missed it, but I think it's a question worth asking.
Yeah, there is an email address. You can find it in the address book. It's called phishing. So it's phishing@staffordshire.gov.uk, and our cyber graduates are monitoring that mailbox, and they are picking up all those instances that come through to that mailbox.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman. Now you've said that, I remember that. Perhaps an email out from this, from you as chair to say, just remind people that when they get an email like Audit in a bad idea, just to push it off. And we have cyber graduates. So what a great title that is, isn't it? Yeah.
I must admit, Natalie, I've always thought, because I mean, I get lots of linking junk email, and people have to sort of the free gift, and so I always, rather than block it, I just put it to phishing, but you never actually hear anything back, and I just wonder, like Phil, although you send it somewhere, you never know if it's going anywhere, or it's quite, so it's interesting to know that someone does look at these things.
Yes, they are, and
that.
they have the facility now to direct it straight to NCSC that do like national checking as well, so that there is a process in place.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. More of a sort of an advertisement for member development. We sent out correspondence to all members a couple of weeks ago now, and it's in relation to the training that Natalie referred to, the Cyber Champion training. So Zach Simister from our team did attend that training, so he's in effect your Cyber Champion for members. But the intention, and we've discussed this with Natalie, is that we would like, and we're going to roll out some training for you as members to have that Cyber Champion training, so then you can become cyber champions for your constituents. So we're spreading that net even further. So again, it was a shameless plug for the training, but thought it was a good opportunity to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. On that note, actually, I think it's always useful as a member that when we have residents who share personal information with me, I always ask them, can I share this with people at Staffs County? But it is one of those that you want to know that it is consistent, don't you? Because if it was the other way around, I would want to know that my information is being shared as and when it should be appropriate. A couple of questions, if I may. Whilst we've got a balance of hybrid working, whereas people were originally either in the office totally or at home totally, how is that impacting on some of the security capability and resource demands that you're no doubt experiencing at the moment? And then one other quick question, because on one of the tables when we looked at some of the statistics for the right of access, subject access requests, it had got missed, very few were missed, but just sort of some idea, is it by a day, a couple of days, by longer periods, and is it due to the complexity of some of those? Thank you.
Okay, so with subject access requests, they are split into two. Families and communities deal with those current social care cases. Now, some of those can be deemed as complex. For standard subject access requests, you have a month to respond. For the more complex, there is the opportunity to extend that to a further 2 months. So you've actually got 3 months. Now, in families and communities, there has been a little bit of a backlog due to the numbers. They did see an increase during COVID. I think that is now evening out, that they're clearing the backlog. They've had a restructure in the team. They've got more resource there now, so they are clearing that. The access team deal with the more corporate ones. Those are less likely to be deemed as complex because you haven't got that social care involvement. I think both areas did see a rise during the pandemic, but I think that is evening out now. With regard to your question on remote working, to be honest, we did see a spike April 2020. We were a little bit concerned whether everybody working from home was going to be an issue, but again, that has come back down to more normal levels now. We have recently had an audit as well on remote working and whether there are any additional risks, and I think that has come back substantial assurance. So it doesn't seem to be, although we are still putting those messages out there, about confidentiality and being aware. And I think that there is something about when people are sort of working in isolation, you can't just turn to your colleague and ask. And I think we have got processes in place to assist people if they aren't sure.
Natalie, you can go and do your important job of keeping us secure. Thank you. Thank you very much. Right, agenda item 5. We're back over to Debbie now. Over to you, Debbie, please.
Okay, so thank you, Chair. So this report presents our proposed internal audit strategy and audit plan for 2022-23. Appendix 1, which is found at pages 23 to 69 of your pack, provides the whole of the strategy and the plan in detail. And there's also an accompanied presentation, which is what I'd like to go straight to, which can be found on pages 71 to 89 of your pack. However, we've got the presentation also on the big screen. The remainder of the covering report really provides some further background as to the purpose of the audit strategy and audit plan. And the Accounts and Audit Regulations 2015 require that all local authorities need to undertake an effective audit. And one of the ways that we demonstrate that at Staffordshire County Council is by having a robust, risk-based internal audit plan. So today's presentation, really, there's a number of aims of today's plan. And that is to hopefully demonstrate to you that we do have a robust methodology for formulating the plan and identifying those key risks. Also, that the plan does focus on the key risks for the year ahead, and we'll spend a bit of time today talking about the content of the audit plan. Hopefully I'll demonstrate as well today that whilst we do have, set audits in the plan and planned audits, we also have that flexibility to react to emerging risks as we go throughout the year. So we've got that inbuilt flexibility within the plan. And also that just to give comfort and assurance that we do have sufficient resources to deliver the plan for the year, which will help us form our annual audit opinion. And as you know, the audit annual opinion comes to committee each year, which will be at the next audit committee in July. So the audit strategy, to start off with, that's one of the service's key governance documents. It comes to committee annually and it's endorsed by this committee. And it really focuses on the risk assessment process and the methodology. So within your appendix, there's a further sub-appendix, which is A, which talks about the various ways in which we risk assess every auditable area of the county. The work that we do, the audit managers, we spend a number of months formulating the plan for the year. It's a very intense process. We talk to 70, 80 plus people each year to ensure that the plan is tailored towards the risks for the year ahead. So hopefully we've left no stone unturned. The strategy also sets out the key principles that we like to apply. We can deviate from these principles, but we like to ensure that all high-risk areas are covered, that we have compliance audits as well as systems audits, that there's time for reactive investigation work, and they're set out within the strategy document. And also within the strategy, we also refer to the number of resources that are required to fulfil the plan for the year. So what you'll see, I'm not expecting you to top them up today, we have 2,290 days worth of audit time. 1,920 days of that time relates to the County Council, and we have 370 days worth of external client work. Of the County Council's plan, which is the 1,920, 450 days of that is dedicated to counter-fraud work, be it reactive and also proactive work. So the main aim of today is really to give you comfort around some of the contents of the plan. So I thought that the best thing to do would be to start off at what the top risk reviews are for the year. We don't always refer to them as the top 10. Sometimes we can do more. And as you can see, we've got 12 key risk areas that we're focusing on. And as you know, as part of the audit charter, all top risk reviews, that report, regardless of opinion, will come to the audit committee to give you that oversight of those controls for those key systems reviews. So hopefully when you look at those on the screen in front of you, none of those should be of any surprise to you, and they should resonate with you in terms of social care reforms. Clearly that's going to be a high risk area that we want to look at. We've got project support time, so we're going to, as an audit service, we are invited to give advice and guidance as new processes are devised, and that's what you'd expect from your audit service. You don't want to come in at the end of a process redesign and start criticising. We want to work with services. We've also got the Children's and Families Transformation. That having recently concluded, we now want to do various audit exercises to ensure that systems and processes are working as intended. As you would expect as well, we've got climate change, and we're going to be looking this year at a slight change to last year's audit, where we looked at the governance and the strategy and the action plans. This year we're going to be looking at project and programme management to ensure that those climate change projects are actually being delivered and to time. And again, as from the last committee meeting, you had the reactive investigation in relation to climate change. So we're going to also continue to look at the Action Fund to ensure that any funding is being spent as appropriate. Cyber assurance, again, as you would expect, also makes a top risk review. And we've got 4 pieces of work which will give assurance over our cyber security arrangements during the year. I won't go through all of these, but as you can see, we've got things in relation to governance and culture. Did you want to say something?
Yes. On 12, what's a section 117? I did look in the document, but I couldn't. Yeah, thank you.
That's where we work with the NHS, and then when people leave or they're not sectioned any longer and they come out of a care setting, it's the funding to provide support to individuals that come back into the community. Also, you'll see, and for the last few years, we've had SEND as a top risk review. We are obviously changing the scope of that to ensure that the accelerated programme plan is still being sort of kept to. So we will be giving assurance that on SEND again this year. And what we'll also see as well is that we've got some further grant verification work in relation to COVID. So hopefully those areas sort of all resonate with you, and there's no surprises there in terms of what you'd be expecting us to look at as your audit service. In terms of the key financial audits for 22-23, we don't just look at operational audits. We like to ensure that we give assurance over our financial management arrangements. We always look at the payroll and budgetary control, and then we do on a cyclical basis other financial audits around main accounting, sales to cash, treasury management. We're also going to be undertaking some work in relation to the procurement of the new back system, and also we're going to revisit the MyHR IT system and do a full application review in relation to that. terms of governance audits, we're going to be undertaking a review in relation to the county's culture and really to gauge what the council's culture is and how that promotes good ethical values and behaviour. And that will stretch across the whole of the council, looking at sort of the constitution, schemes of delegation, how our policies enforce and promote good behaviour across the council. We're also going to be looking at the Staffordshire Leaders Board as part of the county deal. And we've got lots, we touch upon governance in a whole heap of audits, from children's and families, decision making. We're always looking at decision making arrangements and schemes of delegation. And we're also going to be looking at key partnership arrangements as well, including the Integrated Care Board. One thing just to mention, we are the auditors for Staffordshire's pension fund. And we do act as the lead authority for the internal audit working group for the pensions pooled arrangements that came on board a few years ago. So we are very heavily involved in Staffordshire Pension Fund. As you would expect in relation to COVID, our support will continue during 22-23 for the council. We're currently undertaking 2 exercises that occurred at the back end of last year in March, looking at the council's procurement activity in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic. And also we're looking at another aspect in relation to the suspension of the Care Act as a result of the COVID pandemic and what that meant, and whether then the care that individuals got has now been reinstated back to what it should have been. So they're 2 exercises that are ongoing at the moment. Also, we have a number of grant verification exercises that are required for various central government returns, and we've got 71 days worth of COVID grant work that we need to conduct at various intervals throughout the year, and they have specific prescribed deadlines for that. Something to bring to members' attention is around schools compliance audits. So we have noted a significant increase in the number of limited assurance reviews. Now, those limited assurance reviews don't come to this committee for review because schools have their own chair of governors and their own sort of governance structure. However, obviously, we do keep an eye on what's going on. There's a couple of reasons for the increase in the numbers. One may be because of the COVID pandemic and schools not being able to maintain separation of duties. Also, we changed the way in which we selected the schools for 21-22. We were learning from and using data to try and highlight those schools that may be problematic based upon various red flags. And I suppose, unfortunately, or fortunately for us, it's worked a treat. So we've ended up identifying lots of schools that are not complying. Also, with academisation, now that we're getting towards the back end of academisation, it could be argued that we are left with those schools that are probably less business-like, or the smaller schools. So therefore, we may find that some of their processes and procedures do require sort of tightening up. So we're continuing to obviously do a programme of schools work, focusing on governance and financial controls. We're supplementing that with continuous controls monitoring exercises where we will highlight other areas of non-compliance. But also we want to now move into further education and awareness and understanding. Both myself and the counter-fraud manager are going off to a consultative committee early on in May to give a presentation about what audit is about and about what support they can expect from us, and that we do have an open door policy and people can come to us as well. So we do want to increase awareness around good practice for controls and also fraud awareness as well. And we want to raise the profile of internal audit to, we are here to help and we want people to get it right. There's nothing worse really than having to give a limited assurance report, but those numbers have increased this year, so we do need to keep an eye on that. Moving on to the counter-fraud plan, we have 450 days worth of counter-fraud time. 170 of those days are reactive, so as and when a potential fraud is identified. We also have time for our strategic development, so that's looking at our policies and procedures and various risk assessments. We have time and we have specific time relating to schools for schools communications regarding fraud awareness. And then we have two quite big pockets of time in relation to prevent and deter, which is around our CCM programme for schools and corporate, and also our various proactive fraud exercise, and I'll come on to those in a moment. So I've just mentioned now our continuous controls monitoring exercises. So that's where we use all data available to us to identify possible red flags. And we use a software package called IDEA for that purpose. And we look at quite a lot of financial transactions, and it allows us to spread our time wisely across all transactions of the council, looking at purchase cards, creditor payments, mileage claims, absence data, and we use absence data around use of a purchase card whilst somebody may be sick, and that may highlight a potential red flag. And we found that has been very fruitful in the past to identify fraud. In terms of the proactive counter-fraud exercises that are included in the counter-fraud plan, well, we're constantly learning from past occurrences of fraud, and as you will have seen, as an Audit and Standards Committee, you have received regular reports in relation to purchase card cash withdrawals. Although that area won't be reported to you this coming year, we clearly, if there's an issue from our CCM work, we would be reporting that through to you. You're obviously aware of the taxi operator issue that occurred last year, and we'll be giving further support to the school's transport team in 22-23 in relation to that. We're going to keep under review various member-led funds, including the Climate Action Fund and the Community Fund, just to ensure monies are being spent appropriately, and that the County Council receives back evidence that monies are being received appropriately. Direct payments, prepaid cards, we will look at, and we work with the ACFS team to look at financial assessments to ensure that there hasn't been any deprivation of assets. Also, sorry, let me just switch off there. Sorry, it's still going, isn't it? Might have to sit on it a minute, it still goes. Sorry about that. Right, I'll talk a bit louder. Also, you'll see from the audit plan, we have brought back in-house the household waste recycling centres. And again, we want to do a lot more fraud awareness in relation to that area. We want to have more of a presence and undertake some training in relation to that. Other points worthy of note that's in the audit plan, we have obviously a contingency pot of time, and also we have time for recommendation tracking. And during this year, we're going to roll out our new online audit portal for recommendations, which will allow for real-time reporting in relation to audit recommendations, which is a great, fantastic development and enhancement to our service as well. So to summarise, hopefully you would have heard from me today then that we're going to give support and assurance over the financial management arrangements of the council. There's a number of digital projects that we're giving project support time to within the plan. We have time allocated for various transformational exercises in relation to social care reforms, highways transformation, children's transformation. We're giving support to those services where functions have been brought back in-house, such as household waste recycling centres, and also various services in relation to the I+ contract. We've got ongoing time for the COVID response and support for grant work and other areas. We've got governance audits. We're going to continue various exercises in relation to the council's procurement and contract management activities. We have a good helping of audits that look at our key partnership arrangements, such as MPFT, AMI, Entrust, and the LEP, and Midlands Engine. And we have a programme of ICT audit work, as you would expect for a large organisation such as ourselves. So hopefully today you are assured that we do have a robust methodology to formulate the plan, that we are focusing on those key risks for the year ahead, that we do have that flexibility whilst we like to we do set out what planned work just as a guide. That can vary as we sort of go through the year, and we will always respond to any requests for assistance from across the council, and that we do have sufficient resources to achieve the plan. So, Chair, happy to take any questions in relation to that.
Well, thank you very much for that report. It's very, I must admit, in my 50 years of being in finance, I think I'd rather cop out now. It's too complicated. Janice, you go first. I've got you, Bernie.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. I, for one, when we started looking through, appreciated very much the detail that's in there, as well as the methodology behind how many days are assigned to each of those. So although it was a lot of the science, I think it is a helpful piece of information. And as well as, from my education background, reviewing your objectives on there, I can quite easily tick off a number of those, say, yeah, those have been satisfied. The last bullet point on there about resources, I noted that there was 175 less days this time round. And whether or not that is led by the resources that are available as opposed to the demand that's there, I think would be the primary question. And then subsequently, if I may, how that balance then is set out between what we do to provide services elsewhere, which I understand, generate an income, and a not small amount of income either, but whether or not we're providing sufficient attention to what we need to do here before we start looking elsewhere. Thank you.
Yes, so I suppose overall we are happy with the resources that are assigned for the year. The 175 days, whilst that has been down, like you quite rightly spotted, we do look to place assurance elsewhere where we can, so we felt comfortable that whilst we might not be undertaking some work in a set area, we can place reliance on maybe an external inspection or another internal review that's going on, which will then allow us to pick up that work next year. The reduction in the days, there's a couple of reasons for that. The first one is around there's a member of our staff is going on maternity leave, and also we've exhausted the use of our internal audit framework contract, and we've now moved on to another framework agreement. The old framework agreement suppressed the day rate substantially. We were quite lucky to keep it so low for so long, and that day rate unfortunately now has caught up. So it means that we can buy in less time. However, coupled with that as well, it is both mine and Lisa's intention. We have a number of vacant posts during the year, which clearly is a cheaper way forward for us. So the intention is to offset that time by recruiting to those vacant posts. And we do have a substitute list that we'd like to bring back into pay should we recruit some of those audits that we would have liked to have done that didn't make the cut. So we will continually keep this under review, and should there be any emerging risks that come on throughout the year, we go back to the original planned work and we look to see what we could take off for this year without any impairment to the audit opinion. So we look at this plan, we monitor it, it's on a daily basis. Does that hopefully answer your question?
Chair, it does, yes, and I think that the flexibility question was also something that came to mind earlier on, if there is another emergent risk. Whether I'm sufficiently satisfied that there are other equally demanding and pressing things that should be being looked at that we don't have capacity for now, I think I am reassured by the fact that it is being monitored, but clearly when those resources are fully in place, then I think that then it would be appropriate maybe to give us some information back again as to where we're at that point. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. It's a really comprehensive report. I've just got a very basic standard question actually, but with the focus throughout the paper on risk management and the importance of it, I think with effective risk management, it often creates opportunities for improvement. And that was my experience, having worked at Rolls-Royce for many years. Are you able to identify perhaps a significant improvement that has resulted from a true focus on risk management in this particular piece of work?
Just as an example, Well, I suppose there's a couple of things really. So in relation to our project support work in relation to highways transformation and around the Entrust contract management arrangements, because we work so closely and we do a lot of project support, we're constantly feeding back revised processes and controls which allow us to work with services right at the beginning to put in place those controls to mitigate risks. We work with services all the time. Lisa is at the moment rolling out a new risk management system which will bring with it more refined risk management arrangements for the council. That's Lisa's looking after that, and I'm no doubt during next year, once that new module is rolled out, that there'll be various output that will come back to this committee in relation to that.
I'm glad you mentioned highways transformation, because there's a lot riding on the back of that, I think, based on the unfortunate history that the highways team have had with Amy and co. That is a particular focus, because I know that members are particularly keen now, having been incredibly impressed with the presentation on the highways transformation, that it actually delivers. And I do hope that there are some demonstrable milestones in their programme that you'll be able to really identify and hold them to account, because it'll be a disaster if that fails. And I think you've got a very important part to play in making sure that they deliver. And I really do hope that that happens. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for your report. And my question actually on page 33, you've got unaccompanied asylum seekers and refugees, and you say processes are in place and not operating effectively for the provision of support to unaccompanied asylum seekers and refugees. Can you give us some insight on what processes are in place? And also below that, you're on about children commissioning and the transformation programme. And I speak with my mental health hat on actually, and ask, you know, is this being taken into account, mental health services for these people? Thank you.
The audit really will inform what processes are in place, if I'm being honest. So, but the sort of things that we would look at is around the arrangements that we put in place for these individuals and the communications, and if there's any financial support and payments that go to these refugees, how that is being controlled and accounted for. But the audit work will actually give us assurance over the various financial and governance and operational arrangements. So it would look at the whole system.
Chairman, can I just say, I asked that question because we know it'll be a growing issue in the years to, you know, in the next few years. Thank you.
Well, I've got a small question. I probably can't answer this one. You know, you mentioned on home to school transport. Who decides whether someone can go outside of Staffordshire, say to Cheshire, to a special school? Is that decision who makes that decision? You know, I know you audit these things, but who actually makes that decision?
I think that's probably a difficult one for myself and Debbie to answer. I think you probably need to have a word with someone in that part of the world, like Tim Moss, to try and find the answer to that one.
Yeah, that's fine.
Support's required, and then how that's then procured in. And I think that I think families and communities and then the transport team work together to come up with the best package, but I'm only talking very generalistically, I don't know.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Anne, just to help answer that question, and I can chat to you later. As you know, I was the unaccompanied asylum-seeking children's champion for some time, and there is a lot set up to help with mental health. I'll just assure you of that here. And I also sit on the Vulnerable Persons Resettlement Scheme, where I can go into all the details of how they're picked up at an airport, if it's planned for them to come, picked up at the airport, taken, they have someone with them the whole time. There's a lot in place, but I can chat to you about that in detail, about the mental health issues and how it's supported, if that's all right. So back to the report. You are asking us to recommend and approve the internal audit plan for 22-23. I not only recommend this, I feel quite assured that this is a robust plan. Appreciate the methodology and the attention to detail in here. I also like the fact that waste and recycle has come into this now. To use my nan's words, so excuse me, where there's muck, there's money. And I always find it strange that there's not much of an income from recycle. So I think this is brilliant. I've always been impressed with our internal audit anyway, but I absolutely can recommend this for approval.
I'm sure we can all agree with that recommendation, can't we?
Thank you, Chairman. And looking at the Stafford, on page 35, the Staffordshire History Centre, I'd like to put on record, actually, the amount of work that's going off there to make sure our history is well preserved for the changeover to the, you know, with the redevelopment that's going on. So from the committee, I'd like to think we put on record and say a big thank you to all the voluntary work that's going off in the History Centre, as I say, to make sure our archives and everything are protected.
Thanks, Anne.
In the redevelopment, thank you.
Right, that leads us on to the forward plan then. So, in the absence of Lisa, I think it's over again to Debbie.
Okay, so thank you, Chair. So the forward plan really looks ahead now at what's coming or scheduled to come to this committee over the coming months. Just by way of highlights, in terms of the next audit committee, there's a number of various annual reports. We've got the annual report on the work of the Audit and Standards Committee, so that's bringing everything together into one report, and that will be presented by Lisa. Also, we should have the external auditors' audit plans for both the county and the pension fund. Also, we'll have my internal audit outturn report, which brings and pulls together all the work from last year, which will then feed into the annual governance statement. It's the annual audit opinion. So this report, Chair, is really just to give members a look ahead as to what's coming to the committee and to feedback if there's anything that requires to be added to the schedule at all.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Have members got any comments to make on that? I think it's pretty exhaustive, and I'd like to thank Debbie for the work she's doing. Thank you. That concludes the open part of the agenda. Brings on to agenda item 7, so I've got to read this little bit out. Exclusion of the public. That the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business which involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in the paragraphs of Part 1 of Schedule 12A as amended of the Local Government Act 1972 as indicated below. Thank you. Right. Over to you then, I think.